Her mum-in-law sold her because she couldn't have kids, but the mountain guy everyone wanted picked her. A young lady who lost her husband got blamed for the worst thing a woman could do, not making babies to carry on the family. Kicked out by her mom-in-law and doomed to be forgotten, Sarah looked like she was headed for quiet nothing, but a surprise look at a Wild West party switched it all up. Hey there, my good buddy, this is Jasper Ashwood, your storyteller for Mountain Stories. Before we jump in, be sure you hit subscribe and leave a note down there saying where you're listening from. A huge squeeze to you guys, and I hope you like the tale. Wyoming area, winter of 1867. The ground was napping under a sheet of ice, and carts moved slow through snowy paths cut into the wild spots. The quiet of early morning clashed with the hidden stress floating around at the Thornton home place, a big wood building with tall windows, where the chill got into not just your bones, but your heart too. The home place stood like a big sign of Wild West dreams, its thick wood sides showing years of fighting against the tough weather. Smoke came up from lots of chimneys, but the heat never got to the spots where Sarah hung out her days. The helpers moved down halls with quiet steps they knew well, their feet softened by old carpets that used to be nice. Sarah Thornton sat next to the cold fireplace in her room, hands together on her legs, face turned to the missing fire. The weak light from one candle showed the pale look of her skin, and the flat glow of her gray eyes. Her black dress, thick wool with long arms, hung like a dark shape over her thin body. She had made it herself in the weeks after Jacob died. Each poke of the needle was like a wish for calm that never showed up. The room that used to be their special spot together now felt like a grave. Jacob's boots still sat by the door, dusty because no one wanted to touch them. His hunting gun hung on the wall, a quiet sign of the guy who would never come back from that bad trip into the hills. Sarah's fingers followed the old cloth of her skirt, thinking back to how Jacob once said he'd get her a silk dress when they got rich. That promise, like lots of others, went away with him in the icy wild. She had lost her husband less than a year back, and since then the home place that once had laughs and dreams had turned into a jail of quiet talks and mean looks. Since her husband died, the young boss Jacob Thornton, Sarah being there had become a pain for Martha. Her mom, that lady, stiff like the ice on the window glass, stared at her like every thump of her heart was a wrong, and it wasn't from being sad or upset, but something way meaner. Sarah had not made a kid to carry on. Her empty belly was, to Martha, a wrong that couldn't be fixed. She had said it without feeling bad. A woman who doesn't keep a family name going doesn't get to have it. Sarah put up with it all without saying stuff. The no friends coming over, the mean stares from the farm workers, the chilly rooms they put her in the farthest part. She kept wearing plain clothes, fixing her hair neat, doing every rule, because she grew up with pride, even when people shamed her. But that morning, the fake face broke. "You've been sold, Sarah," Martha said, her voice flat. "Mr. Harlow, a good trader, said yes to taking you to pay off some old bills. His cart group leaves in 5 days." The words stayed in the air like ice bits, pointy and hurting. Sarah's breath stopped in her neck. She had thought of lots of things, more cold treatment, maybe even told to go away. But this was too much. To be sold like cows or stuff, as if her being a person meant zero. The morning sun coming through Martha's workroom window seemed to laugh at the dark time. On the table were papers, deals, stuff that made Sarah's value just a thing in a book. Martha's feather pen sat next to them, the ink still fresh from her name. The deal was done. Sarah's future was picked without her knowing, without her okay. Sarah didn't say stuff right away, not because she didn't get it, but because her insides squeezed under the hard push of that word, sold. She got up slow, went toward Martha, and stared her right in the eyes. "You're giving me away like I'm stuff. You made yourself that by not giving my son a kid. Don't blame me for doing what's needed. Jacob died before we could know if we could." Sarah's voice cracked a tiny bit. "You hate me for something that was never my pick. What kind of mum wipes out her son's memory like this?" Martha stood up. Even with her years, her body stayed straight. "I'm not wiping out Jacob's memory. I'm wiping out your being here, which dirties it." The quiet after was more hurting than any yell. Sarah left the workroom with her head up, face blank, but her heart hurt bad. She went back to her room and shut the door soft. She let herself cry for the first time in months, not from being sad, but from the shame of being treated like a paid bill. During the next days, there were no bags or wines. Sarah had no brothers to stick up for her, no family name to use in front of the town. She had only her name, her pride, and the quiet talks of a bad name ruined by an empty belly. Martha gave her a pearl gray dress to wear to a Wild West party set up by the town bosses. "One last nice night before you go," she whispered. Sarah took it without fighting. That night would be her goodbye, not just to the Wyoming wild, but to who she was. When she went down the main steps, the farm worker moved aside without staring at her. Snow kept falling on the tops as the cart took her toward the town hall. No one went with her, but shutting her eyes in the cart, Sarah didn't think about the backstep. She thought about her mum, who before passing had taught her one thing: when the world says no to you, you pick who you are. And that night, without knowing it yet, the whole world was about to see who Sarah Thornton really was. Night had come over the Wyoming area with a serious feel only the Wild West winter could bring. The bell from the town church rang far away as carts lined up before the trading spot hall, where the folks got together for the winter party held to honor the area's start day. Inside the big hall, the quiet talks of the Wild West fancy people filled the air like a song of unsaid mean thoughts. The wood floor shined under lamplight, and the walls with wool covers showed the quiet pride of an area that still thought it was wild. It was in this feel, where every move was planned by habit and who was higher, that Sarah Thornton came in alone. The sound of her steps on the wood floor made a short, almost not there quiet. She wore a black cotton dress, plain in shape, but perfect, with close sleeves and a high neck, decorated only by a small black stone pin. Her hair was fixed simple without fancy stuff. Sarah walked without waiting, not looking for stares or dodging those already poking her, because everyone stared, and not with nice wonder, but with the mad of those who think they're better. Is that her, the lady without a husband or kids? How does she come without a straight ask? They say her mom-in-law gave her as pay. The quiet talks flew between cups of apple drink and laughs held back, but Sarah didn't stop. She knew every step she took was watched, judged, made fun of. She had no strong family name, no alive husband, no baby promises in her belly to keep her safe. She had only her pride. But one stare followed her without mean, a steady, strong stare. From the top of the main steps, Flint Bridger, the most looked up to mountain guy in the area, watched the scene with blue eyes stuck on her, as if trying to figure out a puzzle that said no to answers. Flint Bridger was a big story in the Wyoming area. Guys said his name with respect mixed with scare. He had lived through fights that would kill smaller guys, battles with mad tribes, winters that froze the blood, meetings with big bears that left marks on his back. His name as a tracker was best. It was said he could follow a path 3 weeks old through rocks and water. But more than his tricks, it was his no-give in good ways that made respect. He had said no to payoffs from rich traders, turned down big money deals that would break his rules, and once walked away from lots of fur money rather than break his word to a Cheyenne boss. At 38, he had made a life of being alone. Women had tried to get his notice, daughters of rich sellers, ladies without husbands looking for safe, even a hairier boss's niece. But Flint had stayed not touched, not reachable, as far as the hilltops he called home until tonight. Until Sarah, there was something in the way she walked, in that almost fight way of holding herself straight, that took away his guard. He knew the heavy of people judging, but he had never seen a woman walk like that among bad guys. When he came down the steps, the air seemed to get tight. He wore a dark leather coat with plain edges, clean deer pants, and old boots that told of lots of paths. His just being there made way even among the most stuck-up town folks. Sarah, standing by a post near the main hall, felt the change in air before seeing him. She didn't need to turn to know he was coming to her. She knew by the quiet, by the way women stopped faking talk. When he stopped before her, Sarah looked at him without dropping her head. "Mrs. Thornton," he said, in a deep voice. "This night makes no sense if it doesn't start with a right dance." Sarah's heart hit once, hard like a far bell. "Sir," she said at last, "I haven't been given a spot in this hall. I wouldn't want my being here to fight with the knight's nice ways." Flint made his eyes small, not from mad, but wonder. "The only wrong note in this hall would be not asking the only woman who came in with her head up," he said back, and then he held out his hand. Fans clicked shut. Women leaned in like hunt birds. Martha Thornton pushed her lips so hard that blood seemed to leave her face. Sarah put her hand on the mountain guy's. She didn't shake, only breathed deep, and let him lead her to the hall center, where the music folks started playing the first notes of a Wild West waltz. The tune was plain but sticking, a song that told of wanting and far away, of lives on the edge of townways. Sarah's feet moved with the exact of one taught to dance, but with the soft of one floating between thoughts. Her mum had taught her to waltz in their small room back east. Before the dreams of Wild West, Rich had pulled her family west, before the sick took her parents. Before she found herself alone and took Jacob's ask more from need than love. Those lessons seemed like from another life, another woman. The touch of Flint's hand on her side was strong but nice, and their stares met only once as they turned in a slower bend. In that short time, the full hall went away. The quiet talks faded. The judging looks melted. There was only the music, the move, and the weird feel that something that couldn't be taken back was starting. Sarah saw in his eyes not pity or want, but knowing, as if he saw in her a mirror of his own alone. His own fight to keep pride in a world that wanted same. It was barely a second, but in that quiet cross, something broke, and something else started. She saw in him more than a leather coat. She saw unsaid questions, and I alone she knew as her own. He saw in her more than a woman down from good. He saw held strength, a quiet hurt, and a pretty that let itself be found over time. When the dance ended, the claps were short and flat. Sarah made a perfect bow, and Flint, without saying a word, led her back to the hall edge. There, before everyone, he bent his head a bit. "Thank you for not being scared of me," he whispered before going. Sarah didn't say back, only watched him walk away. And though her face stayed calm, her chest burned with a question she didn't dare say. From the other end of the hall, Martha Thornton watched the scene with eyes full of bad. Inside her, a promise grew with the bite of shame. "I won't let a woman without future dirty the Thornton name." And while the next dance started, stares were no longer on the town folks' shiny stuff or bosses' moves. They were stuck on a shape in sad clothes, who, without meaning it, had just changed the whole town's balance. The sun barely showed between the pineful hills, when the first talks started going around, like a held whisper that grew with each house. The news went fast like a fire fed by bad story. Flint Bridger has said out loud his plan to date the widow Thornton. The say made the night before in front of area council folks had left quieter room used to the sound of careful words. The area's most looked up to mountain guy had spoken clear. In a move that broke the stiffest rules of Wild West people, Flint Bridger had claimed for himself the woman everyone thought thrown away. Martha Thornton, her face white as snow, left the party without saying bye to anyone. Folks from the area council shut themselves in tight talks. And at the Thornton home place, Martha threw a metal cup into the fire spot as soon as she heard what the farm workers were chatting. "What kind of magic has that woman done?" Martha yelled, walking back and forth in her study room. "I won't let a widow without family pull my family name through Wild West dirt." The sellers wouldn't wait long to spread stories across the area. In the farthest part of the home place, Sarah stayed calm, though inside her a mess of feelings wanted to spill. She wore a plain wool dress and sat before her icy window, watching the town still covered by morning ice. By mid-morning the boss worker said Mrs. Catherine Reed was here, wife of the area measurer. Barely an hour later came the widow Harrison. Both women, hidden in nice ways, hid knives in their stares. Sarah took them with perfect nice, knowing every word was a trick, every nice say a hidden mock. "And how have you done it, dear, to make Mr. Bridger stick his eyes on such a plain woman?" Sarah said back with a steady voice. "They say guys sometimes get tired of show and look for real stuff." The visit ended with tight grins and fake promises, but one after another, people from Wild West people started coming before her. The trading spot workers noted every step she took, every word she said, every note she got, but Sarah wrote to no one, nor said back to the notes that started coming. Her quiet was her guard. Only one note was taken with special care. It came from Flint's house. At 5 o'clock at the creek turn behind the pines. The time came with the slow of things, both scared and wanted. Sarah walked without guard through the path behind the town. Her heart beat hard, not from dream, but from not sure. The creek turn was warmed by afternoon sun, smelled by winter pine. At the far end stood Flint, standing, hands behind his back, stare stuck on the far line. Sarah didn't speak. She stopped a few steps from him, waiting. The mountain guy turned slow and looked at her. "I didn't think you'd say yes to come," he said. "Nor did I think I'd get an ask," she said back calm. "The town is made to eat those who don't fit," he started. "And yet you came in without bending. You gave me a dance without scare. You held your stare before the storm. Do you know how many women I've seen fake good? You were the only one who faked nothing." Sarah dropped her stare a bit. The mountain guy's words weren't nice, as they were rough. Almost look at facts. In the far, a bird flew circles up, its call sounding across the low spot. The creek water kept its forever song, not caring about people's stuff. Sarah watched a leaf float by, carried by the flow toward a not known spot, and felt like it with its no help trip. "Sir, I'm not a pick for anything," she said with calm voice, finally breaking the quiet. "I have no big family, no gift money, and neither can I promise a kid." The last words came out softer. The hurt they showed still new, even with the months gone. "I get I may seem like a easy pick for a guy looking for a wife without messes, but I must be true about what I can't give." Flint nodded slow. "That's just why I pick you." Sarah raised her head, confused. "I need a wife," he said. "Not a mum for a kid who may never come. Not a shiny thing to glow at parties. I need a buddy who won't ask for power or helps. A quiet, proud, strong woman. Someone who won't see me as a big story, but as a guy doomed to be alone." He turned a bit, his stare following the creek's way through the trees. "I've spent 20 years making a name in this area. Every seller, every boss, every town guy thinks they know Flint Bridger. They see the deer coat, the gun, the marks. They tell stories about me in bars, make big my doings, turn me into something I'm not. But none of them see the guy who comes home to an empty house every night. None of them get what it's like to be around people and yet all alone." His voice had a tide that Sarah knew right away. The worn out of wearing a fake face so long you forget what's under it. "I've watched guys marry for land, for money, for people's spot. I've seen women trade themselves for safe, for high, for getaway. I won't be part of that dance. If I marry, it will be to someone who gets that marriage is not a dream story, but a team of same bound by respect, not sweet love." The heavy of those words fell on her like thick snow. "Are you asking me for a marriage by job?" she asked soft. "I say a deal. You'll have my name, my guard, my respect. In return, I ask stay true, quiet, and space. I'm not a guy of soft." Sarah stayed quiet for some seconds, then took a step toward the creek. "I say yes," she said at last, "but with one thing. I'm hearing that you never take from me what I am. Don't ask me to be quiet or not seen. Don't ask me to fake." Flint looked at her with a strong that lit the air between them. "Never." And then, without touching her, without saying more than needed, the mountain guy bent short in sign of yes. She did the same. Two shapes before a future set by words, not kisses. When Sarah left the creek turn, the cold Wyoming air hit her face hard. But for the first time in months, she knew something had switched. The say of the join between mountain guy Flint Bridger and widow Sarah Thornton had made a big stir, not because of hoped sweet, but because of what this move meant. A break of order, a quiet slap to family lines, a pick that said no to the not written rules running Wild West people. The first days after the deal were a mess of doing. Area council writers carefully made every part of the marriage deal. The paper had not one say of like, give self, or life together. Instead, it listed jobs, promises, stuff limits, and act rules. Sarah was hoped to keep calm and respect town ways, but Sarah wasn't a doll. The afternoon she looked at the deal with her law helper. She stood by the window. She wore a gray-blue cloth dress with a straight neck. When she got to the parts stopping her moves in the area, she raised her eyes and said, I won't let myself be stuck in a trap shaped like freak. Before the helper could say back, a quiet shape showed in the doorway. It was Flint. He had come to watch how Sarah would act, and he found her just as he thought, straight, clear, without scare of speaking up. Which part bugs you? He asked. The one that stops my free, the one that fakes I should live behind covers and hide from life. Flint came close. I have no want in making you quiet, Mrs. Thornton, he said. But the town will if you don't guard yourself. Guarding myself isn't the same as hiding, she said back. Then, with a slow move, he took the pen from the table and crossed out the whole part without asking the counsel. Respect and free, he said. That was the deal, and that's what I'll keep. The deal was set that same afternoon with black ink on skin paper. The days after were colored with fake. The joint was talked in careful words, while behind shut doors mocks were made. Sarah was given rooms far from the main house, small and cold. The clothes makers, who should make her wedding clothes, helped her with mad. She was said no to some town meetings under fake of fixers. Even at Sunday church her spot was given far from the main families. Every move was a quiet sign that though she would soon wear a plain gold ring, she still wasn't wanted. Sarah put up with it all with the same calm. But she didn't just hold back. In secret, she asked okay to visit the help hospital at St. Michael's Place, where poor ladies without husbands, no parent kids, and left women were cared for. She went lots of times a week without guard, in plain clothes. She helped make meds, hear women, read notes out to those who couldn't read, and quietly started paying for some cares. The nurses learned to wait for her. The youngest sick began calling her the lady with soft hands. The people began talking, not with bad, but with soft. The shape of the mountain guys meant, who to the fancy was a wrong, for regular folks slowly turned into a promise. Meanwhile, Flint watched. He didn't step in, didn't ask, but knew each of Sarah's steps. One afternoon the mountain guy found on his table a small no-name note written by a place kid. Thank you for bringing warmth to my mum when no one else did. Flint held the paper for some minutes. Then he put it in the drawer closest to his heart. The Wyoming sky started, covered by thick mist, as if the whole area had picked to cover the light as a sign of coming. It didn't rain, but the air was wet and cold, with that sad quiet before days that leave no happy thoughts. The bells of the town church rang quiet at 11 o'clock, not with happy, but with the holdback of a thing done by job. There was no walk line, no folks get together, no flower boughs, no music folks at the door. The church itself seemed to hold its breath, its wood seats cold and not nice, even with the small fire burning in the metal heat at the back. The windows, tall and thin, let in weak light that did little to warm the stone floor. Ice had made on the inside of the glass, making fancy shapes that seemed to mock the cold set ways of the time. The guests who came were few, and none brought the warmth of party. They sat spread through the seats, leaving big gaps that said more than words. Mr. Samuel Worth sat in the front row, his face set in a look of job calm rather than joy. Behind him, a few area helpers traded stares that went from wonder to no-like. The town church folks sat stiff, there being their more boss job than spirit good. Sarah Thornton came in a dark cart without guard and without family. As the cart stopped before the church steps, she took a deep breath, getting ready for what was coming. The driver, an old guy named Henrik who had once got med from Sarah for his sick wife, helped her down with a soft that brought water to her eyes. The first real nice she'd felt in days of cold ready. She wore a plain cream wool dress with a full skirt and a short cover over half her face. The small edge at the high neck had been hand-sewed by nuns from the place where she used to go. Their wishes worked into every poke. They had cried as they sewed, knowing Sarah was walking toward a marriage of easy, not love. The dress had no fancy buttons, no brought lace, no beads that caught the light, but it was clean, smooth, and proud. Everything Sarah herself showed in her hands. No flowers bunch on her chest, no fancy save for a small wood cross on a leather string. A gift from one of the place kids who had pushed it into her hand the day before with the serious words, "So you won't be alone, Mrs. Sarah." She came in alone. Upon stepping on the church floor, there were no heads turning in, like only the sound of her steps sounding on stone and a thick air. She walked with head up, chin strong, eyes calm. Flint already waited her at the front. He wore his best deer suit, clean and kept good. His way was perfect, but his stare was gone, as if his mind went far from that spot. They didn't trade words. The church guy started the thing without starts. He read "good" says with serious, no excited voice. There was no talk about love, only holy words said with exact. When the time came to trade promises, Flint held Sarah's hand with right, without push or soft. His fingers were cold as stone. Sarah said each phrase with strong voice, without weight. Upon finishing the rite, the church guy said them joined before God and the area. There was no kiss, no claps, no music, only a long, not comfy quiet. Sarah went out on the mountain guy's arm, but he didn't look at her. None of the there came to say good. Outside the cart waited. No one threw flowers or rice. The go back to the house was quiet. Sarah sat facing the cart window, watching the area pass like a gray pick. Flint didn't say a single word during the trip. Upon getting to the home place, they were taken by a farm worker who led them through long, empty halls. The north part had been ready for her, far from Flint's rooms. Her new home was a set of cold rooms without own stuff. That night, while the home place halls stayed in dark, Sarah sat before the dress table. She took off the cover, the pin holding her hair, and the hand covers over her hands. She looked at her mirror self, but didn't see herself as a wife. Past 9 o'clock, a helper quiet knocked on her door. She carried a flat with a glass of water and a paper wrap sealed with plain wax. Sarah took it slow. She opened the wrap careful. The writing was known, strong, pointy. I owe you no like, but I promise not to shame you. There was no name. Sarah left the note on the table and stood. She walked to the window and pulled aside barely one of the heavy covers. She pushed her lips soft. She didn't wait for like. She'd known that before saying yes. But that night the sound of those words cut deeper than she would have wanted to say. She didn't cry. Instead, she looked for a cover and lay on the seat by the cold fire spot. And so on her first night as the mountain guy's wife, Sarah got that her real bad guy wasn't the cold rooms or the town's mean. It was the empty, the deep hole between her name and her heart. The sound of the no music marriage kept floating through home place halls like a sour tune. In the area's meat rooms, Sarah Thornton's name was said with different feels, some with mock, others with mean, and a few in low voices with wonder. The town looked for an answer that would calm its not comfy. Why her? What made her so needed to the mountain guy? Answers not found in true started building themselves in lies. Talks were born like not seen seeds. First it was said Sarah had been the kept one of a dead boss. Then that her no kids was just an out. It was even hinted she had magic the mountain guy. At the head of these whispers stood Mrs. Eleanor Worth, wife of the area helper. From her sit-room she set up quiet gets where the most poor women came with their best covers and sharpest words. The people don't get that respect isn't given by help, she said. It's earned, guarded, and that woman has earned 0. The others nodded, some from easy, others from scare. So Sarah was around by a thick air where every move was watched, looked at, taken with bad. Helpers spoke of her quiet as if it were stuck up. Town folks blamed her of not mixing with people. Sarah did not see what was going on. She learned to know stares that dodged her and faces that changed upon seeing her come in, but she picked not to say back. Instead, she put her time and push into St. Michael's Place. There, far from shiny chairs and oil lights, women who didn't judge her by her name waited her. The place was a plain building at the town edge, built from rough-cut wood and believe. The top leaked when it rained. The windows were covered with oil paper instead of glass, and the floors were hard dirt covered with old carpets. But in those plain walls, Sarah found something the Thornton home place had never taken. With her own hands, Sarah fixed sheets, gave out bread, heard stories, paid for meds, wrote notes for hurt hunters, and gave her ear to young ladies without husbands. There was Mary, whose husband died in a minefall, leaving her with 3 kids under 5. There was old Thomas Hurt from a bear hit, who cut small wood animals with bent fingers and gave them to the no-parent kids. There was Clara, blind from a kid sick, who sang songs in a voice so clean it brought water to even the hardest hearts. Sarah learned their names, their stories, their sads, and small joys. She held the hand of a young mum dying of lungsick, whispering nice until the last breath stopped and stayed. She taught a dozen no-parent kids their letters using a board and white stick she bought with her own less money. She talked with the town doc, getting him to visit the place weekly and trade for keeping his plants and making his mixes. She became not just a comer but a lifeline, and it was there between those plain walls where Flint started to see her for the first time. For weeks he had watched his wife from far, but something started to change. One afternoon, without say, he went to the place. He wore plain clothes without his usual leather coat. Sarah was there, sat beside a bed, reading out to an old woman who could barely see. She didn't see his being until his voice soft-cut her. "May I stay?" She raised her stare. There was no shock, only a quiet calm. For over an hour, Flint watched her move among the sick like a water going without noise, but leaving its mark. She didn't speak much, didn't give bosses, but every person she touched seemed lit for a bit. Upon leaving, the mountain guy said nothing, but that night, in his rooms, he sent away his help earlier than usual, and stood alone before the window, watching the star-full sky. The area help group event was done a week later in the town's main hall. It was a boss time, and all out there folks were asked. Flint had to go, and this time Sarah was on the list. The night came with clear skies. Sarah came without show. She wore a dark wine wool dress with black stringwork, long arms, and a plain wool cover. Her hair was fixed in a low bunch with only a plain wood thing. She came in on Flint's arm, who showed her with total right but no clear light. Still, his being at her side was a stronger say than any word. During the event, talks started. Helper's wife spoke of numbers, bosses of counts. When it was said the mountain guy's wife would give some words, the whisper became a wall. The whole hall got tight. Sarah went up the stand without rush. She stopped before the would speak spot. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear as water over stone. "I bring no numbers or promises," she said. "I bring names. Rose, who lost her husband on the path. Thomas, who can't walk but draws birds. Clara, who sings though she no longer sees. And dozens more who wait for something more than help. They wait to be seen as same, not from feel sorry, but from fair." She spoke no more. She didn't need to. The whole hall stayed quiet. There was no big claps, only alone claps, flat and strong. It came from the hall's center. It was Flint. And hearing it, little by little, others joined, not from must, but because they got a new voice had come up. Morning started clear over the Wyoming area. Spring started smelling the forgotten spots of the land in the north part of St. Michael's Place. Time seemed to have another beat. Sarah was in her usual spot, standing beside a bed where a thin-faced old woman held her hand without speaking. She didn't wait for comers, much less a being like the one that suddenly filled the door spot. Flint wore a plain cloth coat. Sarah didn't show shock or get up with worry. She only turned her face and looked at him with that calm she had learned to make as guard. "Sir," she said soft. "I came without say," he said back. The mountain guy came close without show. He crossed the door and went with her through the long hall. For some minutes they didn't speak, only walked. Sarah showed him without words the small spaces where kids drew, where women fixed old covers. It was in a lone corner where walls were covered by piled books that Flint stopped. He turned toward Sarah. "I can't not see what happens out there. The voices, ways, whispers. Everyone thinks they know who you are, and I know nothing." Sarah leaned soft against the shelf. "And now you want to know?" Flint nodded. She didn't say back right away. She walked toward the window. "I'm not no kids," she said. Then without shake, or at least I wasn't. Flint made his face small a bit, not from no belief, but from the hurt he guessed. "What happened?" Sarah dropped her stare, her hands together slow, as if each touching finger woke a sleeping memory. "During my first year of marriage, I got a baby. Jacob and I didn't know right away. He spent long times away as part of his hunt to learn. When I learned, I wrote to my mum-in-law. I thought she'd be happy. I thought I'd finally find in me a good daughter and—" She stopped, her voice getting softer as if talking to the window more than to Flint. "What I got was a note. Don't get hopes up. You haven't done anything yet." From then on, bosses became harder. She wanted me to go to all parties, stand for the family. She said no to me rest. When I spoke of blood, she made me quiet. She said no true wife ruined her job over simple not comfy. The memory came over her like a wave, pulling her back to those bad days. The hurting that got worse with each week. The spots of blood she tried hard to hide. The spin that left her holding chairs just to stay up. And through it all, Martha's voice cold and no stop. The thorns do not show weak. You will go to the crop party. You will grin. You will not shame this family. I lost the child one early morning. Sarah went on, alone in my room, without a doc, without nice. Blood wet the sheets for hours. The pain was not like anything I'd ever known. Not just body hurt, but the knowing that something dear was going away, and there was no power to stop it. When someone finally came in, it was too late. The child was gone. Part of me died that morning, too. She went quiet. Flint took a step toward her. He didn't touch her, but his voice when he spoke was different. Why didn't you tell me before? For what? Sarah asked without heart. Everyone had already picked what I was. A no-kids widow, an empty woman, and you needed a wife without messes. Flint brought her hand to his face. I didn't know, he whispered. Sarah looked at him. I'm not sure I can get a baby again, she added with calm. The hurts of heart and body were deep. I don't know if someday I'll be able to, and I no longer chase it. Then something not weighted happened. Flint took another step. This time he did touch her. Only one hand, barely a touch on her arm. A held move, but so full of person that Sarah felt her chest burn. I don't want kids from you, he said soft. I want to get you. It was everything. He didn't promise love, give self, or a perfect future. But in those words was something more true than all the front promises. That night, upon going back to the home place, Flint didn't come in through the side door. He crossed the main hall with strong step. He showed himself before the area council, and with clear voice wanted his wife, Sarah Bridger. Hours later, at Martha Thornton's house, a sealed note came. The inside was short but clear. My wife deserves honor. If you can't give it, stop saying her name. The home place dressed in plain that night. Each wood had been cleaned, each light lit with care. The whole Wyoming area breathed with weight, as if it knew what would happen that night would mark a not-seen line between what was and what would come. The area start day was done, and the event got the area's best sellers, helpers, marked hunters, and yet there was one being in special. Everyone waited with worry. Sarah Thornton, now the mountain guy's wife, would go as Buddy. No one knew for sure how she would show. Some bet on a plain dress. Others thought she wouldn't dare come through the main door. But none of them knew what was already starting in the corners of Flint Bridger's heart. At 9 o'clock exact, the hall's main doors opened. A town guy said, Mr. Flint Bridger and his wife, Mrs. Sarah Bridger. The world seemed to stop. She showed on the mountain's arm, dressed in a deep red wool dress with plain bone buttons. The color wasn't random. It was red, a color that asked respect without sorry. Her hair was fixed with exact, showing the perfect shape of her neck, where rested a single shiny thing, a plain silver hold that had been her mom's. Long arms felt nice to cover her hands. She used no fan. Flint at her side kept his head high, back straight, face no change. But his eyes, when they looked at her side, spoke of a true only he was starting to know. Sarah was no longer a quiet shape in his dark. She was held light. She was being. The whole hall went quiet, not by rule, by hit. Talks went out like lights surprised by wind. Only Mrs. Eleanor Worth didn't move. Her cream dress clashed with the frozen mud covering her face. Flint stopped in the hall's exact center. He didn't speak a word. He turned toward Sarah and with an on-purpose move took her hand, cover hand. He raised it soft and kissed it out before the whole area. A clean kiss, yes, but strong. A kiss that didn't ask okay or sorry. Then, without losing serious, he gave his arm. Sarah took it, and together as same, they crossed the hall under the stare of the whole town. One by one, townfolk started bending their heads, not toward Flint, toward her, because that move wasn't a say of love, but of knowing, power, real. The people clapped first, shy, then strong. Sarah, the widow without gift. Sarah, the maid quiet woman. Sarah, who came in alone through the coldest door, had just been made holy with a move that neither council says nor town talks could say no. From a hidden-up spot, a shape watched the scene with face covered by a quiet cover. Martha Thornton. She had dreamed of seeing Sarah fall, but what she saw that night was the end of her power. While all turned toward the hall center, Martha turned around. She walked through the hall without looking back. Upon getting to the door, she gave the driver a note. To the stop tonight. The area no longer was hers. In the hall, Sarah moved with held normal. She said hi with nice without to. Upon getting to one of the center tables, a place kid came to her. He was small with curly hair and bright eyes. He gave her a paper flower. For you, ma'am, he said, shy. Sarah bent down, took the flower with both hands, and held it against her chest. Thank you, Samuel. I'll keep it where no one can take it from me. The boy grinned, and in that grin, more true than all the night's vows, Flint saw the true spot Sarah had won. Not the home place, not the town, but a people's heart who felt her as theirs. Winter started going away slow from the Wyoming area. In the home place's east part, Sarah and Flint shared a being made of stops, whispers, and long stares. The tie between both was no longer that of two not known joined by deal. There was in their living a new match woven without rush, grown in respect, and fed by moves more saying than any say. There were no outshows of like, but there was a cup of tea he left on her table each morning. The book she left open on the page she knew he'd read at night. The note written in soft hand waiting him on the soft. Flint used to come back from his jobs at nightfall, and without fail went first by the yard, where he knew he'd find her. Sarah, wrapped in her gray wool cover, checked the first flowers, daring to bloom. They didn't always speak, but when they did, time stopped. The winter roses have held on, she said, one afternoon without looking at him. Like you, he said back, and the quiet that followed was deeper than any chat. That close started being seen, even among helpers. But not all were ready to take that change. Mrs. Eleanor Worth, shamed by before events, stayed in dark. Eleanor, smart and wait, knew how to find the break. She used old letters from Sarah with help groups and showed them before the council as proof of supposed plan to break power. A woman who wins people with talks and nice is no less bad than one who does so with guns, she said. The talk spread fast. The word backstab started going around. Sarah saw the change in stares. The far of certain townfolks. She said nothing. She had learned quiet was also a way of fight back. But Flint did see, and this time didn't stay quiet. He called the full area council. He came in wearing his best deer suit. He carried in hand a single paper, the first letter with Ellen Worth's name. Today I come to show not a backstab against the area, he said with strong voice, but a backstab against true, against honor, against a woman who has given more pride to this land than many born in it. Quiet was total. He bossed with the power his spot gave the right away out of Mrs. Worth from the town. It wasn't a boss say, but a people one. That night upon coming back to rooms, he found Sarah sat by the window, calm sewing. Did you know? She asked without raising her stare. Yes, he said back, and bent down before her without warn. Sarah dropped her poke thing. The mountain guy in deer, with knees on floor and eyes stuck on hers, was an image she never thought seeing. I don't want to keep living in a marriage by job, he whispered. Not after all we've shared, all you've taught me. You don't deserve a husband by parts. I don't want you to be my wife by easy, but by love, Sarah. The words stayed in the air between them, heavy with mean. Flint had spent years building walls around his heart, telling himself that alone was strong, that no need meant never needing anyone. He had watched other guys fall to bits when they lost their wives, had seen strong hunters made to broken shells by heartbreak. He had sworn never to give anyone that power over him. But Sarah had slipped past his guards without trying, had shown him that true strong wasn't in alone, but in letting yourself be known, to be open, to need and be needed and back. She didn't say back right away. Her chest went up and down slow, and in her eyes shined a held feel. Years of no and shame, fighting with the maybe hope that maybe, just maybe, she was worth of being loved. Not even with her seen fails, but as the full woman she was. She took his face between her hands and looked at him in quiet, keeping every line, every mark, the silver starting to go through his dark hair. Don't bend before me anymore, Flint, she said at last. a voice thick with feel. If you love me, if you truly feel it, walk at my side. Not before me, not behind, at my side. I don't want your bow or your guard from far. I want your team, your true, your being. I want to know your scares as well as your strong. I want to share both joys and loads. That is what love means to me. Not big moves or pretty words, but the daily of picking each other over and over in small ways and big. He nodded. And in that bit, without kisses or forever promises, they set a deal stronger than any area say. It was take each other without things. It was knowing that love, when born amid mean, grows with more strong. That night the east part hall stayed in shadow, but in a room that had been cold and far. Two shapes shared the same space, not by must, but by pick. Love had come, not with fire or rush, but with the warmth of a light lit at winter's end. Several months had gone since that night, when Sarah and Flint set a deal of love, born from true, shared pain, and each save. The Wyoming area woke with a new beat, slower, more person. Morning sun crossed windows with gold shine, spilling soft lights on white rock paths winding through Wild West gardens. There, among wild flowers and blooming trees, walked Sarah, dressed in a plain purple cloth dress. Around her a dozen kids, no parents from the area place, laughed, ran, got flowers. For weeks Sarah had opened a spot in the time to bring them to know a world, until then said no to them. A young sender came running from the council halls. He carried a wrap sealed with the area mark. Sarah took it with a small grin and opened it. She read in quiet. Her eyes showed no shock, but a held feel. One of the kids held to her skirt. Is it something bad, Mrs. Sarah? She bent to his height, touched him soft, and said back, no, sweetheart. It's something good. Something very good. Hours later, the town hall was full. Flint came in first, with his usual serious. He said hi to all and stayed standing beside the wood stand. At his move, Sarah crossed the hall doors, dressed in a plain gray wool dress with a blue string edge. A boss read out loud the say for her give to regular people, her help service, her show of pride, hold back, and brave. The Wyoming area gives Mrs. Sarah Bridger the honor of keeper of the people's heart with all respect that brings. May her name be written in books as sign of make-up between power and people's hearts. The words sounded through the hall, each bit carrying heavy that set over the got folks like snow. This was not before. In the 12 years since the area had been set, no woman had been given such an honor. Bosses got shiny for work service. Army guys were said good for guarding the wild. Rich givers were known for their money gives, but never had someone been honored pure for feel sorry, for seeing worth in the forgotten and pride in the throne. Quiet was total for some seconds. The light seemed to burn brighter, making dancing dark on the walls. In the front row, an old woman who Sarah had cared through lungsick held her cloth to her face, water going down worn cheeks. Beside her sat a young guy whose life Sarah had saved by getting the doc to cut his ice-bit toes before bad could spread. 3 no parents sat together on a seat, their faces serious with the get that something big was happening, even if they couldn't full get what. Then claps, first shy, then sounding, filled the hall. It started with the regular people, those who had felt Sarah's soft hands and heard her nice words. The claps spread like wildfire, getting even the area council guys who had first said no to knowing a woman in such a way. No one waited it would get to this spot. Many had bet on her fall, her forever quiet, but there she stood, a woman without king family, without got rich, up by good and love. That afternoon, gardens again filled with laughs. From the upper up spot, Flint watched the scene with crossed arms. He said nothing, only looked at her. Sarah raised her stare. There was no far between them, but neither need to come close. He slow went downward steps until getting to her side. Kids stepped aside with normal respect. Flint put himself before her and held out his hand. I promised I wouldn't shame you, but I never promised what you truly deserved, he whispered. She turned her head sweet. And what do you think I deserve, sir? He took her hand in his, kissed it soft on the back, and said back, everyone's knowing, but above all my whole heart, no matter how many kids this area has. You are my bravest pick, Sarah. You're the only one I picked without job, without push. I picked to love you, and I'd do it again 1,000 times. She didn't say back, only squeezed his hand strong. The area's bells started ringing. There were no weddings, no births, no winds to party, and yet they rang with strong. It was a regular day, but there was something different in the air, as if all people knew this love, born from pain, mean and alone, was a bigger win than any take. The Wyoming area had changed. 9 years had gone since that day, when bells rang without boss reason, yet with more force than ever. Since then, every spring the people did the day of the say that honored Sarah as keeper of the people's heart. In the home place's east part, gardens looked greener than ever. Wildflowers bloomed lots, and climbing roses went up posts as if wanting to touch sky. Under the center cover, a woman with calm stare held in her arms a girl with dark curls. The little one played with a cutwood doll while her mum whispered a story in her ear. Sarah had changed. Her pretty stayed whole, but had grown with the nice of those who have loved and hurt with same strong. Thin lines showed at the corners of her eyes, not from years, but from years of grinning at the place kids, from small eyes in the sun while caring her gardens, from the lots nights spent reading by light to those who couldn't read themselves. Her hands, once soft and nice, now had the marks of true work, small marks from point pricks, hard spots from digging in the dirt, the stay ink spots from writing notes for no-read hunters. At her side walked a guy with salt and pepper hair, front marked by years picks, but with eyes that softened every time they found his wife. Flint Bridger, the big story mountain guy who had walked alone for 38 years, had found something more dear than all the furs and gold in the area. A buddy who saw him not as a big story, but as a guy. Their son, Jacob, named for Sarah's first husband in a move of heal and forgive, was 9 years old, tall for his age, with his dad's point blue eyes and his mum's soft way. He spent his mornings learning to track with Flint and his afternoons at the place, teaching younger kids to read. Their daughter, Elizabeth, at 6 years old, was a spin of push and feel sorry, already showing signs of getting her mum's gift for seeing the worth in every person. Flint never stopped being her daily pick, and though many waited the mountain guy to take a wife promising family, it was Sarah who brought into the world 2 kids, a strong boy and a lively girl. The births had been hard, especially the first. Sarah had worked for nearly a day and a half, with Flint walking outside the bedroom door, his hands held so tight his hand bits went white. Against all guess, love also brought life. But Mumways wasn't her biggest leave. It was her always work in places, schools, and no parent homes that set her spot in story. Martha Thornton, her old mum-in-law, spent her last years in a Far Hill house. She died alone, saying no until her last day to say her daughter-in-law's name. Mrs. Eleanor Worth, out by her own stuck-up, found safe in Montana area, where she tried without win rebuilding her pool. Story had been no give with those who picked pride over feel sorry. One morning, upon done 9 years of her naming as keeper of the people's heart, Sarah got a worn cover book. It was a day book found among Martha's stuff. Upon opening it, she found pages full of mean judges, but also at the end some bad lines. Maybe I was wrong about her, not for no kids, but for being stronger than I ever was. Sarah shut the book without speaking. That night at sundown she burned it page by page, and bits were carried by wind. Now seeing her walk through gardens on Flint's arm with her young daughter chasing flybugs and her oldest son learning flower names, the people said hi to her with respect and like. For the young she was a show, for the old a living tale, for women a hope made real. That night, while the Wyoming area slept, Sarah and Flint sat under the same sky that had seen them doubt, fall, and rise. They held hands as in the start. He rested his head on her shoulder. She shut her eyes, and both heard in quiet to the area bells that once more rang. Not for a say, not for a kid, but because 9 springs later love kept winning mean, and that deserved party. Sometimes life takes away everything we thought safe. A name, a home, a promise of future. That happened to Sarah, who was hated, sold, and shamed by a people that measured a woman's worth by her way to give kids. But amid that dark, she picked pride. Good quiet, strong feel sorry, and it was just that which changed her future. Because this isn't only a love tale, it's a tale about how respect, Keep going, and a quiet woman's brave can change a whole area. Sarah didn't need to yell to be heard. She didn't need kids to leave her leave. She didn't need to beg to be loved. She picked the hardest path, and that's why her ending was most deserved. If this tale touched your heart, let me know in the notes and write the word brave. That way I'll know you're part of those who value deep and keep in mind stories. Stories where true love doesn't always yell, but always wins. Thank you for being here.